2016 being such a hotly contested election, with conflicting issues like the Mexican border and racism, I've overheard people saying they don't plan to vote at all. But what if I told you the same things occurred in 1842, and a single vote from an Indiana farmhand changed the history of America? The one vote of a DeKalb County farmhand in 1842 started a chain reaction of events that are classic in illustrating the importance of a single vote. This farmhand was Henry Shoemaker. He was working the fields on election day in 1842 when he realized that he completely forgot to vote. He dropped what he was doing and rushed into town just in time to cast his ballot. Shoemaker lived in a district represented by 2 counties, which were tasked with electing a single representative to the Indiana State Legislature. Somehow, some way, the election ended up being a tie between Madison Marsh and Enos Beale. But Henry Shoemaker made it into town just in time to cast the deciding vote. However, Shoemaker was so late that they were out of official ballot tickets with his candidate choices. So he had to cut out Marsh's name with a pocket knife and glue it to his ballot. Because he was forced to use this makeshift ballot, at first it wasn't even counted. But eventually, the Indiana Supreme Court ruled in Shoemaker's favor, and against all odds, Madison Marsh received a tie-breaking vote and was elected to the Indiana House by 1 vote. Because of the delay regarding Shoemaker's vote, Marsh was the last representative to be elected that year. The House of Representatives was in charge of voting for Indiana's national senator in Washington, D.C. As the last person elected, it was Marsh's final vote that elected the Democrat, Edward Hannigan, to the United States Senate. Had Marsh not been elected in time, Hannigan would not have received the majority vote. Hannigan took office in D.C., coming into the Senate at a time when the hot topic was Texas and a potential war with Mexico. Texas had declared its independence from Mexico in 1836, and the U.S. was interested in annexing the territory as another state. Finally, in 1845, the U.S. decided to annex Texas. But Mexico argued that the Texas border was incorrectly drawn, and eventually a battle broke out in the disputed area. War was looming, and politicians like young Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass spoke out against the idea of war, arguing that the resulting territory from a war with Mexico was just a trick for the United States to add more slave states in the South. The Massachusetts legislature even released the following statement: "The Mexican War was unconstitutionally commenced with the triple object of extending slavery, of strengthening the slave power, and of obtaining the control of the free states." Regardless of opposition, the U.S. Senate was still locked at a dead tie in the vote for war. However, Edward Hannigan was away from the Senate and was the only senator who hadn't voted. He returned to cast the final vote, which was the vote that sent the U.S. into the Mexican-American War. The U.S. won the war in a commanding fashion in just 2 years. As part of the concluding treaty, Mexico was forced to give the U.S. claims to its other territories and the disputed Texas border for a sum of $15 million. And of course, this heightened the slavery dispute, which would ultimately lead to the Civil War. All in all, had it not been for a single vote of an Indiana farmhand and the chain of events that occurred afterwards, the history of America might have looked different, as we'd be missing most of our states in the Southwest. So remember, as Election Day approaches, that regardless of who you vote for, go vote.